using.
Yep. I'm curious where it ends up.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna pay attention, so
Okay.
I'll put this down.
Alright, so we're gonna start off a couple news updates. I wanted to point out that we have a Flutter Austin LinkedIn page, and we're gonna start directing people to that because I actually go on LinkedIn every now and then, whereas I don't go on the meetup site. And then I would prefer to have, like, pushing conversation or whatever, just push it to the comments in LinkedIn, whether on my personal, like I'll always push these events to the LinkedIn page, and then also cross-post it to my own feed. So in the comments section would be good if you have any questions or comments before or after the event. And then, so since we met last time, the Flutter 3.38 came out, and Dart 3.10. And notable features, David, you'll like this one. So we got dot shorthands, which was the #1 gripe when we came from, like, all the Kotlin engineers that came to my Flutter team, and then Swift engineers that went to Flutter. We had dot shorthands in those languages, but in Dart it felt like a step back. It felt like Java coding, where it's like I had to put the full type in when I know that a file I can just infer the type.
That's not new recently, I think, and that's a long time.
No, it's brand new.
Really?
It just shipped. So, like, here's a code sample.
Oh, with dot like that, okay, cool.
Yeah, so like, instead of typing status dot running, it knows it's a status. It's already got the type that can infer that, so you just need to put dot running. It's just,
That's cool.
It's a nice little, it cleans up the code and makes it more readable.
I was thinking like the var and let stuff that you can do. That's pretty simple.
And then, like, switches, now you can just do the dot on the switch statements. So it just cleans up the code a little bit. That was kind of cool. So that just shipped in November. Stateful hot reload on web is now the default setting. I think they made other key improvements to that. So that's pretty cool. And then continued progress on material and Cupertino framework updates. So they are, what's that?
You have glass now?
No, we don't have glass.
Or whatever they call it, yeah, glass, right?
Liquid glass, yeah. So there's a Flutter organizer call that I get to hop on, and they'll have somebody from the engineering team present. And this month they presented on this decoupling material and Cupertino frameworks. And he showed that what in the mental model that we all have is probably like this just generic, like, base widget framework, and then there's material and Cupertino sitting over here. He said that's not actually how the code's organized. That material, being Google's framework that they started with, it kind of has like a bunch of core things in it, and they need to, and then Cupertino kind of sits on top of that. And they're in the middle of doing a major refactor where they're like pulling things out of the material framework and pushing it up into the widget library, generic widget library, and then they're basically making it to where what you think it is, but it's not. To where material and Cupertino will be two decoupled components. They won't need to know about each other, and they'll just reference the widget framework. And one of the reasons they're doing this, which is a big deal to me, is reduce dependencies on material, which will allow third-party UI frameworks to improve. One of the things that when I made the mental shift from going from native iOS engineer to cross-platform engineer, I then got over the mental hurdle of like, oh, my apps don't have to look like iOS apps anymore. And so you can have your own design system and design language. And then once my mind clicked on that, I then began to notice good apps. My favorite is the Cache app. If y'all have ever used it, really simple design, but it's not Material or iOS. It's got its own design language, but it looks like a mobile app, and it's just very clean and it's nice. That's now my preference. I don't want Material or Cupertino. I want to build something like the Cache app, right? So I think this is going to open that up to like third-party developers can like release new UI frameworks that have their own design systems. You don't have to like create your own from scratch. So that, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be good. And also, side note, when I asked that engineer, because they're doing this decoupling, and he was showing some things that are going to change, and I was like, I brought up that one of the problems I'm having with AI is that we're all trying to code agentically with AI, and I think my perception is that the React Native people have a better time at it because there's so much React on the web that the AI has a lot more training data that has React in it, and so React Native gets kind of inherits that boost. Whereas there's not as much Flutter widget training data out there, and so I find that the AI kind of struggles when you do this like agentic coding. Like I can say I want my UI components to do this and look this way, they never come out that way. Like I end up having to hand code UI components still. So that's one of the last issues with it. But I asked him, I was like, is there, because Gemini 3 had just dropped, I was like, is there any conversation between the Flutter team and the Gemini team to make sure that Gemini has like a leg up on?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And he did say we're not allowed to talk about like exactly what we're doing internally, but I can tell you there's two-way conversation happening between Gemini and Flutter. So that's good. Now I haven't verified. What I need to do is like give a implementation plan of two different UIs,
right,
and give one to Claude and then give one to Gemini and see if it actually like manifests in like better UI. But that's one thing I want to test out.
Can you tell Claude to use Gemini? Like you can
Not Claude Code. Claude Code is, because it's made by Anthropic, you're tied in to that ecosystem, which I actually had some talking points about that as well. Last thing on this was 3.38 of Flutter officially supports Xcode 26 platform support, not the liquid UI components, but like actually they made improvements with how Flutter runs on devices with Xcode's command line interface, which is apparently the way they were doing it before was like not stable and required, if you ran, like if I attached a local device and ran Flutter, it had to open Xcode in the background, and Xcode had to be open or Flutter would crash in a debug build. I think this fixes that.
The actual app would open on your computer, or just like the tools?
No, like yeah, the Xcode app would have to be open, running in the background.
I've had that happen to me before. I just thought that was how it worked. It was how it worked, I guess.
Well, and that was introduced in like, I don't know, 2 Flutter releases ago, because something changed in Xcode.
Yeah.
They had to do that as a workaround.
Okay.
If you run in a simulator, it doesn't have to be open. It's only if you're on a native device. But 3.38 supposedly fixes that if you've got Xcode 26 command line tools.
Cool.
So that's in there. So that was that update, and then as far as everybody wants to know AI, so Opus 4.5 dropped this month. So we had all been using Anthropic Sonnet 4.5, and previously, so Opus is their flagship thinking model. So their tiers are Haiku, which is their entry level like fast model, and then Sonnet, which is their their flagship. It was their non-thinking model. I think it does thinking now. And then Opus was like their highest end model, most expensive model. But when Sonnet 4.5 shipped, it superseded Opus 4.1's capabilities. So everybody was using Sonnet 4.5 as of last meetup. That was like the flagship model. But since then, Opus 4.5 came out, and now it leapfrogs again over Sonnet 4.5. But it's very expensive.
How is
I would have to look up the numbers, but I think like per million tokens, I want to say like Sonnet might be $15 per million token input token. I'm making this up, but to give you a rough example, I think Opus might be like $20 or $30.
So of 1.5 times or 2 times.
Yeah, but I think it burns more tokens, so it thinks harder.
Yeah.
Thinks longer. But I can tell you on the max plan that I'm on, just the $100 a month plan, they sent me an email and they said, hey, we increased all your limits. And they said I've never hit the limit when I'm on the $100 plan, and I'm using Opus all the time, like just burning tokens. And they say something in the usage agreement when you sign up, and they're like, well, the usage is based on so many tokens per hour and a sliding window. It's like this complex calculation, but then it says, there's a bullet point that says, or based on available resources. And I think what that means is, if we've got idle CPU power or GPU power, we'll just let you use it and run. And that's why I'm not hitting it.
Oh, interesting. So it doesn't actually chip away at your tokens during times when they're available, you think?
Yeah.
Or it doesn't enforce the limits.
It might not enforce them. It's like you can run, yeah, David, I think you're right, because you can run a /status, and I think it'll tell you what you used.
And you're using concurrent agents too, right?
Yeah. Concurrent Opus agents that are just, yeah, it's just burning some shit. Usage. Yeah, so like this week's been a light week, but so current week, all models, 2% used. Current week, Sonnet only, 0% as I'm doing all Opus now. And then current session, 1% used. So it's giving you this, but I just said, I don't think it's actually enforcing it all the time. Yeah, here's the note, November 24th, we've increased your limits and removed the Opus cap. So you can use Opus 4.5 to your overall limit. So it now has its own limit. It's set to match your previous overall limit. So that tells me that I can burn through Opus 4.5 and I still get Sonnet 4.5 to keep going until the end of the month. Okay, so there's that. So in addition to Opus 4.5, Gemini Pro 3.0 came out, and people are saying this one in benchmarks is like the leading model right now. I've gotten to a point with all these tools, I realized because this is the hottest area, all the brightest minds are moving into this space. And so the reason it feels like the innovation is happening so fast is you've got the sharpest startups and VC-backed firms all competing, and so you're seeing a level of innovation that's just like, it's just taking off. So there's no way any of us could keep up with all the releases. And so then I decided I'm not going to try to do that. I'm going to pick a tool set that I think is good, and as long as I'm getting results at it, I'm going to focus on how do I get the best results out of it versus, because I got into this, like, I downloaded Gemini, CLI, I downloaded Anti-Gravity, which is their new IDE, Google's new IDE, which competes with Cursor. It's got some good ideas in it, but I was getting like overwhelmed with just the tool setup, and I wasn't getting it work done. So that's why I kind of shelved that, and I went back to just like, hey, I'm just going to go back to Claude. I was still learning a lot about how Claude Code works, and so I'm just going to go back to Claude Code. Opus 4.5 it just shipped, and I'm like, I don't want to use this new model, so I'm focused on that right now. But I need to try this because if it does have a Flutter advantage, I might want to use it.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, like, that was the other talking point is, I'm using Claude Code, and I've got this $100 a month plan. Like, it kind of gives me vendor lock-in, where I kind of feel silly going over to Gemini CLI, where I'm on a free tier, and trying to use Gemini 3.0 when I've got the $100 tier sitting in Claude Code already paid for. So that is kind of preventing me from experimenting with other models at this point. Versus like, there are some tools like there's open code, where somebody like, because all this stuff I think is open source. Now Cloud Code may not be open source, but you can kind of reverse engineer what they're doing. There's people I've seen on YouTube that intercept the network traffic from Cloud Code, and then you can basically get access to all the system prompts that they're using behind the scenes. It's really fascinating stuff. They've kind of, these guys online, they'll reverse engineer what Cloud Code's actually doing. One thing it pointed out to me was that the Cloud Code team, which is, if you listen to all the interviews, they're notorious for everybody in the company, even non-engineers, are using Cloud Code to do their work now. They all have to. And then they're submitting bug reports and fixes and improvements internally to improve their own workflows. That's why this tool, I think, that's one of the reasons it works so well, is because they're using this stuff to get production work done every day, and they're making improvements, and it shows. And you can see in the system prompts the types of things that they're saying to Claude. Like, they're saying that from experience, and that's all they use. They're not using every model, right? They're just using their own Anthropic models. And so, I feel like you've got a more focused design engineering team on just this one tool and model combination and making that thing optimal. And so I'm pretty comfortable sticking with Cloud Code for now. Okay, that's all the news and updates. And then okay, so this is part 2 of the professional agentic coding and Flutter series. Just a quick reintroduction to the series. You guys were all there, you listened to part 1, but in part 1, the idea is that this second point here, AI is a non-deterministic thing, and that is sort of hard to get your head wrapped around. You can give it the same prompt twice and it won't give you the same answer. So it's non-deterministic, so your job is actually converging on the right solution with the AI. You're trying to build shared context with the AI, and it takes iterations to get there. And so you're trying to get to a deterministic outcome where you want to be, but you're working with a non-deterministic tool, and that's kind of the learning curve I think we're all going through. And then I made a distinction between AI pair programming, where you've got the IDE open, you're working with AI, and you're co-writing the code, you're switching back and forth on who's leading. And I still use that if I'm making small incremental changes. I don't know where exactly the destination is, I'm exploring. I still use that model of development. And then planning is not required in this model, but you can still, all the planning stuff we'll go over today, you can still use in this model. So you can still pair code it, you don't have to do full agentic coding. And then drawing the distinction between that, you're fully delegating to the model and to achieve agentic coding, where you're just going to do the planning up front, you hand it off to this model, it's going to just churn on it until it's done, which might be hours from now, right? So it's going to churn on that until it's done, and that's what I think of full agentic coding. Planning is a hard requirement for that to work well. So so we'll just get that out there. So today's topic is really important. And then you always want to just start with a clean system, a new branch, and verify the state of your application. I'll show you that in a second. Okay, and then one more, setting context, just comparing to how a human team would work. The typical human team, full team, where you've got product design and engineering. You might have 4 to 6, 7 engineers on a Scrum team. So, generally somebody comes up with a new product idea. Generally, it would come from product, and they're either getting it from market or user research, or the CEO just tells them they need to do something. So they're coming up with a feature idea. Design is then taking that idea. They kick off a bunch of user research and user strategy sessions. They start iterating with low fidelity wireframes, and they're iterating with product guys. The product team starts writing hard requirements for the document. It must do X, it must do Y. And then engineering should get involved, preferably earlier, at the beginning. What I see a lot of times is product and design go off in their own room and work together, and then when they're done, they come to engineering like, hey, can you build this? And then the architects are like, you can't build that. But, so typically, so engineering gets involved, in a lot of organizations. A bigger organization where you have actual architects, it would be an architect, and a smaller org, it might just be the lead engineer for the team. But they'll get involved and they'll start looking at what product and design are wanting to build, and then thinking through like, okay, how would we architect this thing to work? What services are impacted? And that kind of forms a technical spec. The deliverable product's gonna give you is a product requirements doc, PRD, and then the design team is gonna come up with low fidelity wireframes, and then eventually those will turn into high fidelity wireframes as we iterate together. And then engineering or architect is gonna come up with a technical specification of how this thing will get built. You take those three design assets, those three assets, you iterate on those, and then once you're at a stopping point, then you hand those over to a Scrum team to convert to user stories, go through sprint planning, break it down into bite-sized tasks, divvy it out to the team, and the team will actually build that. That is, when people say coding, that's the one little part that they're talking about is the step 5. After the coding is done, at the end of the sprint or multiple sprints, depending on the size of the feature, you might have a QA team that does QA on the feature itself, product design, they can all have input reviewing the feature. They get to iterate, but they need to sign off on the product, and then the sprint demo happens, and then QA will generally do like a full regression test, and then they'll release that to the public, right? The point of outlining all that is that's the way we've been working. So, but when we're using AI, all we're talking about, when we're talking about agentic coding, we're talking about this one step, this step 5. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that we still should be doing all the other things, otherwise we're just vibe coding, right? And so everything else just so happened, we're just vibing. And so today what we're gonna cover is the equivalent of generating that product spec, the PRD, and the technical spec, which is the implementation plan. Those are the two things we'll cover today. I have not figured out the thing that replaces the wireframes. And there's some of the podcasts I've been listening to, a lot of people are suggesting that maybe that step doesn't need to happen because the AI can just code up the UI so fast that you can just iterate from that point. So, and that kind of matches my experience with one of the projects that I work on where I don't have a designer. I just kind of generally tell the AI that, you know, this is what I want it to do, and these are the changes I want to make to the UI. I let it just implement it, and then I give feedback and iterate at the end on the UI if I didn't like something. And then, like I was saying with Flutter, I end up usually having to go in by hand and just finish the last 10%. So I have not figured out this step, like what's the equivalent in the AI world. Because also the AIs are not good, I have not found that they're good at taking like high fidelity mockups and turning those into code either. And maybe it's the process that I'm doing, because like on one of my projects that we'll work on tonight, on ListMaker, my business partner is a designer, and he is handing me high fidelity mockups. But if I take a screenshot of like a component and I paste that into the Claude code and say implement this, it's terrible. Like it's not very good at all. I end up having to hand code when I want it to look exactly like his design, I end up having to hand code the last part. On the project where I don't have a designer, I'm just gonna like visually it looks pretty good. I'm an engineer, it looks good to me, I ship it. So I don't have to do as much hand tweaking on that one. But if I want it to look exactly like a high fidelity mock-up, it's a lot more work. Okay. So critical note here. You need to be fully engaged while planning and then later doing the thorough code review at the end. The AI is going to make mistakes, and again, it's about converging on the correct result. It's not deterministic. It's not gonna take your design and just like get it right the first time. If you're lucky, it gets you 95% of the way there, and in your code review, you catch the last 5% and fix it. I actually had an example last week where, what was I doing? I had it, I did the planning, and I did a whole feature implementation. Oh, I remember. I wanted it to, let me see if I can describe this. Let me pull this up anyway, so. I'll pull this up, but basically, well, basically when I would log out, I wanted to implement a logout that would clear the local state, and then a delete account, which is actually called this backend API, delete all the user data, clear the local state, and reset. I implemented this, and the first time I clicked that button, it didn't do anything. And so I thought it was a total failure, total bust, right? It did a bunch of work. I didn't look at it. I wrote the plan, and I had it implemented, and I immediately tried to fire it up and just like, well, does this thing work at all? Didn't work at all. And so I got discouraged, and then when I started digging into it, you know, I was using the AI, so I switched into pair programming mode, and using the AI to sort of troubleshoot it. It turned out it missed like one thing, it didn't wire up the button.
Yeah.
Once it wired up, it mostly worked. So it wasn't a total bust. But like I said, like you couldn't ship it right out of the box, like you still need to do some work. So that actually was a good example where, you know, that last 5% actually mattered a lot. Okay, so that is the sort of introduction, and then okay, so now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a tool that I'm using. If you remember last month, I was trying to figure out how to terminal into here. I found a tool called Happy. Have y'all heard of this? So it's an open source project. Unfortunately, their mobile app is React Native. Otherwise, I was going to jump in and help them. But Happy has a mobile app. It has a CLI, and it wraps Cloud Code. I think it also works with Codex if you want to use OpenAI's. And it also has a back-end component that basically, the problem with the solution I was trying to get to, which was a remote terminal, is you had to have a VPN to get to your home server. And I didn't really like that. It felt very kind of cobbled together. Happy actually has a server where it's going to bounce the encrypted message. It doesn't store any state on the server. The server component's open source, you can review it. It's basically just passing messages off this server, proxying them from the mobile app to your home computer. And so what that allows me to do is I can do full remote development from my iPhone or iPad. back to my local machine, anywhere I'm at. So that's pretty slick. There is one issue they had. The project seemed to be abandoned for a few months, but there's a guy picking it up now. But they had an issue where they were like installing their own version of Claude Code that they weren't maintaining, so it was like several releases behind. And the way I noticed this is Opus 4.5 had just shipped, and when I opened Happy, I was still coding in Sonnet 4.5, and I was like, why does it not have access to Opus? And I figured out that, oh, it's an old client. So if you do run this, when you install the CLI version, you want to just use the Happy Coder beta branch. And what they did is they'll use the globally installed Claude Code at that point. Okay, so that's what I have installed now. So I'll show you something here. If I exit, so all I do is I run Happy instead of Claude. And it looks the same from here, right? I still have the same command line tools, just like it. So if I want to work locally, I can work locally. The only difference was I initiated from Happy instead of from Claude. Okay, but if I go to my phone now and I load the Happy app, I will see an active session here. I think I can initiate new sessions from here, but I'll see whatever active terminals I have open, and then I can open it up, and I can say run run/verify. Okay, so what it did is it basically sent this message and it flipped over to Happy, went into it went into remote mode. And basically I'm controlling the full terminal from here and getting all the output here. When it stops and needs a question, it sends me a push notification. So I went for a walk for an hour and push notified me and it's like, hey, what do you want me to do about this? And I was like, oh, well, fix this. Hit enter, kept walking. So yeah, that is awesome.
And then locally, you don't see anything on your computer when you're interacting on that?
You do. You can kind of see, but it's more like internal. It's like internal stuff. It's not the same conversation. It has more like debug stuff in there locally. But if you do want to switch back, you can switch back and forth. So I hit space twice, and it dropped me right back. I think it threw an error because I was in the middle of doing something. Yeah. Okay. It is an open record. So anyway, so that is my tip there to check out Happy. And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna actually implement a feature, try to. Okay, so this is my app called ListMaker, and there's a native iOS app out there that's been out there for like 9 years. I'm rewriting the whole thing in Flutter, and we're implementing AI into it so that we can generate new lists and stuff using AI. But one of the things I did first was I just got a simple read-only version of it working so I could see my list. Let me actually log in. This is the thing it just coded. I don't have a login yet. Okay, so I just got into an Honest account. Okay, so what I wanted to show was this is a list. Okay, one thing that might be hard to see unless like you're using the app, I'm using Firebase, and when I'm editing one of these items and then I hit enter, it's saving that item to the database, and then it's sending that up to Firebase. This this list and this list over here have a subscription listening to changes in Firebase to this list ID. And so it's waiting for that new item to come round trip and to give me a blank item before it renders into the screen. Now, when you've got a great internet connection, that might take 50 milliseconds, because it's a real-time database connection, so it's pretty fast. But if you're trying to type like, you know, things really fast, it's got a slight lag in it and a slight delay. And it starts becoming more apparent when you are making other changes to the app. And it's because it's not quite the right architecture for this implementation. When you're editing this stuff, you really want it to feel like you're editing a local document that's not even connected. So you can, and that's how the current native iOS app works. So you want to use something called like optimistic writes. So you basically, you want the app to basically save the data locally, update the UI instantly, send the update to the server, have the server make its change, and it's gonna send that change back down. But it's just gonna kind of eat that because it's already updated the local UI, right? The only downside of that is you could now get out of sync with the server, so you could lose something. If you went into a tunnel, the train, or something like that, and you're making edits, they'll show up on your screen, but they're not getting saved to the server. They'll queue up. But I'm willing to accept that in order to get like sort of this fluid data entry, right? Now, I think, let's see, I have an architecture diagram here. Where did I put that? Oh, you know what, better idea, I can write this on the whiteboard. So let me just show you just a very simple version of the architecture here. I've got what I call the UI layer, and I've got a view. That entire list detail is a view, and then that view is controlled by a view model. And then I have a data layer which has a manager and then managers talk to services. Okay, all right, so view models, you can have like a many to one right here, right? Okay. And the idea is that in the architecture is that your views shouldn't have any business logic at all, so there's really not a whole lot to test there. All of your logic that manipulates the views should all be here, and it should be testable. Okay? And then the managers, it's the same thing, just mirrored and reversed. Services should be thin, and these just wrap API calls to Firebase, and they should be like, you know, basically no logic in them. Okay? And then managers have all the business logic. Okay? And then they're controlling one or more services, so they're orchestrating the services. Occasionally I'll have like an orchestrator in here that might be doing things across multiple managers, but that's irrelevant. So what's happening right now is when you say, you know, the user input, you know, they add a new item, that sends a message to the view model tells the manager calls the Firebase service writes that data to Firebase, and you've got, you know, Firebase down here, right? So you've got a back end. Okay, and then the manager has a subscription to the changes in that list, and so through that subscription, it bubbles all the way back up through the UI. And so because of this, you're going to the web, there's, you know, it's pretty fast. Like if you just do like an HTTP call, it's gonna be like 100 to 200 milliseconds response time. But this is, because it's a subscription, it's a socket, it's only like 30 to 50 milliseconds. So it is fast, but when it's on a worse connection, it looks worse. So what I want to do in this change is a refactor. I don't want the view model to control this. I want the manager to sort of abstract this. So I have I have either a list manager, but I also have a list item manager. And what I want to do is I want these guys to store the list itself, just in memory. I don't want to do like a full, I'm not interested in doing like a full offline model. I just want an in-memory store, and so when that view model comes down to the manager, I want the business logic to say, okay, I'm going to update this in-memory copy, and then I'm going to send it right back to the view, and so it should be relatively instant. But at the same time, it's also going to call the Firebase service and save that data. And then it's just going to eat that response. Just make sure it matches up to what it thinks it was and eat that response.
What if it doesn't?
If it doesn't, it has to revert that, and it has to like either show some indication to the user that, hey, your data didn't save, like a toast or something like that.
Yeah, or there's someone else connecting to your same data and they push something that you don't have locally.
That already can happen. So you can, these lists can be shared across multiple devices, and and that works in the current app. If you're like working on a specific item, somebody else can be typing and you can see them typing the other list. So as long as you don't have a data collision, and it's at the item level. So like when I do a write at the most granular level possible. So like you change the color of an item, instead of like sending the entire list or the entire list item, I just send the color and the list item ID. So the only thing changing is that color. So like somebody could change the color and somebody else could change the text, and they wouldn't convert. There is a possibility that you have, like in the current app, if two people were editing the same item at the same time, what it does is it just eats any updates to the currently editing item, and then the last one in wins. So whoever saves last wins. Which turns out.
Yeah, there is.
I mean, this is so simple as this, right? So, list app. Okay, so the change that I'm trying to make is, instead of doing this full round trip, I want to do this refactor where I have this in-memory model, and I'm adding a bunch of complexity here, but I want unit tests around it. And I want to have some rudimentary, like, oh shit, like this thing didn't save, like what do I do to the user? And so that's what we're going to design. So, and the reason I chose this is it's sufficiently complex where it's a good test. There's not any like UI manipulation, because I've already told you like widgets, like it kind of struggles with that. It's purely business logic in Dart. It does that really well. It can write this business logic all day long. And then there's not a back-end component that I need to change, because otherwise then I'm spanning across two projects, which I explained to you earlier. Like the solution I have for that right now is I basically design it, I go to the back-end system, I have it implement the change I need, and then I come to the front end and say, hey, here's a new API, here's the contract, call that API. That's what I just do it in 2 steps now. I think there's ways around it, I haven't figured that out. Okay, so we're gonna try to figure this out. That all makes sense? Okay, I want a, let's see, implement optimistic. By the way, I started to run through this today, and just to run through it 1 or 2 times, and I realized the AI started catching things I didn't think through, and I was like, oh, I'm going to change the presentation because I'm no longer going to ask it to do that thing, because now I know, right? And that's not what I wanted. I wanted y'all to see like, the things that like, the naive things that I'm going to tell it, and then it's going to catch Because that's the demo, that's the whole point, is that the AI is helping me think through, that's the whole point of planning. So I decided I'm not practicing, so I haven't done this yet. And this is a real feature I wanted to implement, so I thought it was a good example. Automatic writes in my app. Currently, when user updates a list, adds an item, or changes the text, etc., the view tells the view model, which tells manager, which calls a Firebase service to update the backend. Then I have a Firebase subscription listening for changes to that list, and that will flow all the way back to the view. The problem is that there is a slight lag between changes the user makes and the UI update. I would like the manager. The reason, by the way, I want the manager, not the view model, this is a different, so this, I have like another list. Yeah, okay. So this is a list of lists over here. It has its own subscription that it's listening to, but it is also like when I'm changing the text here, it's changing immediately, or if I change the color, it's reflecting the color over here. So I actually have two consumers listening to changes in the list at the same time. And so if I did this like optimistic write at the view model here, then it would only update the list detail and not the list manager, right? And so I want to do this one layer lower so that it updates optimistically. It updates both places. Okay. Okay. So I would like the manager to keep a copy of the list in memory and update the subscribers immediately. Then tell Firebase about the change and handle any issues. See what it does. Okay, so it should detect. Oh, I didn't tell you all about it. Let me see if this picks it up. Okay, so this will be a good segue. So it says this is significant architectural enhancement, deserves careful design consideration. There are multiple ways to approach optimistic writes, caching strategy, conflict resolution, error handling. I should use the brainstorming skill to refine the approach with you. And it's loading this skill that I have in my system called Superpowers Brainstorming. And I'm going to go ahead and tell it, yes, use that. You can see here I'm using Opus 4.5. I'm going to come over here and show you a different thing. I had in my notes about planning. So about planning, the first thing that I started doing, there is a plan mode in Claude Code. And it will do planning for this. However, it's not like it's not as robust as I would like it to be. And I ran across this guy that wrote these, this Obra guy. He wrote these superpowers, and this is what I prefer to use. I just like, this guy has a blog. I like reading his blog. I like the way he thinks about using AI. He's like really philosophical and diving into like how this stuff works. and he's put out this free set of skills called superpowers. And they'll work for, he's got it working for Claude Code or Codex or Open Code. And he's really thoughtful. So I've been using his stuff, and and this is kind of one of those areas where there are competing strategies. There's, I actually tried, what's it called? There's a guy on YouTube who's like an educator. He wrote something called, buildermethods.com. He wrote something called AgentOS, which is a set of scripts to do spec-driven development. So this all happened like at the same time. So this guy put out the spec-driven development thing. GitHub released their own spec kit that solves the same problem. I ran across the superpowers around the same time, and then Claude also has the Anthropic team themselves have introduced some other skills that you can download that do some of this workflow as well. So there are competing things. I just like to use superpowers. I haven't tried them all. I have tried AgentOS and did not like it at all. He's since said he's going to drop support for it anyway, so I don't think he doesn't even use it on his own things either. This guy, you can tell, uses this stuff, and we can come in here and look at the skill itself and for brainstorming, but basically turn ideas into fully formed designs and specs through natural collaborative dialogue, understand the current project, so you can you can read the skill and see what he's told Claude to do. It's going to fully explore the project. It's going to ask questions. It's going to prefer multiple choice. It's going to it'll give you 2 to 3 different architectural approaches. So this is all in his skill, and Claude's not going to do that out of the box, right? So that's the purpose of having a skill. So I'm using his superpowers, which by the way is, if I come in here to skills, these are the full list of skills that he's put into the superpowers. This is part of a workflow. So brainstorming is just this is the equivalent of that sort of product requirements doc. This is the product guy. He's just brainstorming at a high level what this thing should do, okay? And then once you have brainstorming done, it's going to go into the writing plan skill. Writing plan is the equivalent of the architect writing a tech spec, okay? So it's going to take that brainstorming, and then it's going to, once you're good with it, and it's expecting you to iterate, it's going to say, hey, I think we've got everything captured here. Do you want me to go ahead and start writing the implementation plan? And you can say no, because I still think we've got to iron out some things, okay? So the note that I tried to make earlier about like you've got to stay engaged in this process, I spent 8 hours on one of these documents. There's a big thing I wanted to do. I spent 8 hours going back and forth with Claude. Now some of it is like, I'd kick it off, I'd go do something else, and then I'd come back and I'm like, okay, what is it? Oh yeah, and then I would kick the conversation off. But it was 8 hours clock time that I spent. And then I took that doc and I ran it by my business partner, and I'm like, hey, this is this big thing I want to do. Here's the spec, and I iterated for 8 hours on it, and then I went through it with him in a Zoom call. He had a few things that input on it. We made those changes. So see, we can spend a lot of time up front getting the thing designed the way we want, and then I did the implementation plan, and then you can just walk away. This is how you get to Agentic, right? And then you can just walk away and let it code the whole thing out, okay? So writing plans will be next, and then it will do execute plans. And execute plans, if we get that far tonight, we may not, but execute plans is really interesting because it has 2 different execution modes. It can, so it'll create a branch, and then, where is it? When to stop and ask for help. So this is where it comes in handy having happy, because I can kick this off and walk away. Where is, I think it's somewhere else, but, there's basically two modes where he's got, this is where the sub-agents will come in. So it's gonna write this implementation plan that's this like 15 task list to implement. And then it's gonna take that and it's gonna hand it off to sub-agents to do various tasks that are like not competing and run them all in parallel. And then and it's using Git work trees, and then it merges it all back together at the end. I mean, it's doing all of it. It's really impressive. All right, so let's continue on the brainstorming. So I now understand your current architecture. Let me summarize what I see. Managers are stateless. They pass through to Firebase. That's current state. View models hold local state and subscribe to Firebase streams. Some optimistic updates already exist in view models, yes. So I was doing it sort of haphazardly before I realized, hey, I should be doing this more globally, in a better way. And then pattern, update local view model copy, notify, call manager, handle errors. Your goal, move the caching into the manager layers so there's a single source of truth. Which scope are you aiming for? List manager only, cache list model, view model subscribe to the manager stream instead of Firebase. Both list manager and list item manager maintains its own cache with coordinated updates. New unified caching layer. I'd recommend option A. So it's giving me choices and giving me a recommendation. Already contains list items, so caching is that. So I want to just do A. And you're talking to like a normal person here, right? So you could say A, but I also want this, or with this nuance, and it'll take that as well. Or you could just say none of these things, and it'll take that. How should view models receive updates from the cache list? Transform the existing stream. List manager wraps the Firebase stream, applies optimistic updates to it, and exposes that combined stream. The view model subscribe the same way they do now. Or separate local and remote streams. List manager exposes two streams, one for immediate local changes, one for confirmed Firebase state. View models merge them. Behavior subject pattern. List manager maintains a behavior subject. Does that help too?
Is that okay for you?
Yeah. List manager maintains a behavior subject per list. Optimistic updates push immediately. Firebase confirmations reconcile. View models get a single stream with the latest value. I've never heard of a behavior subject list model, but that is describing what I was imagining. The other, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'd recommend option C. Behavior subject pattern gives you immediate value on subscriptions, no waiting for Firebase. A single stream to consume, simple view model code. Clear place to apply optimistic updates and reconciliation. C.
I wonder if you could just say, assume I'm gonna answer with your suggested answer each time, and just let it go.
How should the cache lifecycle be managed? On demand with reference counting. Create the behavior subject when first view model subscribes. Dispose when the last unsubscribes. Automatic cleanup. Explicit load unload. Okay, that's not gonna work because the user can click away from the list at any time and you're not gonna necessarily get, or they can just close the app. Session scope cache. Keep all access list cache for the entire user session. Simple, usable memory. Yeah, no go A. Here's how new ones already work. By the way, so when there have been times when I'll have this debate in my head, I'm like, oh, this isn't big enough for me to do this whole planning and brainstorming. And then I'll just start pairing and just start implementing, and then I run into things I didn't think about. And then I've had examples where I was like, oh, this is probably not big enough, but let's just go through the process anyway. And then through this Socratic method, it uncovered things I didn't think about, or things that are better than what I imagined it might be. I was like, oh yeah, do that. And so I don't think I've ever had an instance where I was like, oh, this was a waste of time. Unless you had like a one-liner and you knew exactly what to do, but in every case, like, and if it's a smaller change, the brainstorming just goes faster. It's not that big a deal. When a Firebase write fails, how should the optimistic update be handled? Roll back to last confirmed state. Okay, when the change undo itself. Keep optimistic state, show the error. Leave the UI as is, but show an error. User can retry or manually revert. How would they retry? Retry with exponential backoff. Automatically retry the write. Only roll back after end failures. I'd recommend A, roll back to last confirmed state. It's the most honest UX. If the write didn't succeed, the UI shouldn't pretend it did. The Firebase streams will naturally provide the correct state to roll back to. You can still show an error toast to the user so the user knows what happened. The only thing I don't like about A is they're gonna lose whatever. They're gonna lose whatever they typed in. I feel like it should retry it with exponential backoff and then do A.
So let's say like they added a new item to their list and then their train goes in a tunnel, right?
Mhm.
So then they're not gonna go to write. I would say it should say like, hey, you're offline in that
Yeah.
specific situation.
Yeah.
And don't lose.
Yeah, you don't wanna lose their changes.
Let them keep typing, and then when service happens, it should send what they did, and if Firebase doesn't have a problem with it, it's like, okay, this jives with what I have on here, it's only new stuff or whatever.
But then you also, if you're doing those kind of things, you probably also wanna like persist it locally, so so if they like close the app with their work all done.
Yeah.
But it's not in Firebase yet, then when they open the app again, then it's
I feel like,
able to.
yeah, I feel like the right thing to do is, you actually keep transaction history of like all the changes they're making. And then you play them back in order.
Yep.
Cause if you don't do that, I feel like the UI is gonna end up, you'll just have like small edge cases that will only affect a small number of people, but you'll never be able to troubleshoot them, and you won't know why. And maybe that's fine for this app. And that kind of gets back to that trade-off. Now, when you have AI, if you could just tell the AI to do it, then maybe you could be more aggressive. Maybe I wouldn't do this if I were writing the code, but with AI, maybe I would do a QE transaction system and persisting into disk. So what I would do, C, but I think we should write each, because if you don't block the user, they can keep doing new items. They can keep making new changes, and if you're not storing every single one of those transactions, then, what are you gonna store? Just like, you're gonna be stuck on the first one, you lost all the other ones, or you're now in a situation where you might have to you would have to send the whole list up, because you don't know what they've changed since the last time.
Yeah, I was thinking it would work kind of like Git, where you don't need to store the whole everything, you just store the changes, so kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah. Queue and be able to deploy them to Firebase in order once. Now we're thinking through one scenario where it's a connectivity issue that's gonna get resolved, but what if it's an actual business logic issue and that data is not valid for whatever reason? We don't want that thing to retry forever. Which that wouldn't happen with the multi-user scenario. The last one in wins, and that's how I resolved that, so.
Yeah, but it could be like, their authentication expired.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I think this is one of the reasons I didn't want to do this is because for this app, it's not mission critical that the list item state gets kind of weird, but yeah, in that scenario, you would have to have them re-authenticate, then play back whatever changes are in the change history. Let's see what it does. Firebase in order once connectivity is restored.
it wouldn't ever show the user that anything's going wrong. I mean, I guess it would
Not
show
until,
offline or something,
until
but.
it fails. It should retry, I think it should retry a couple times, then show the user, hey, that thing didn't work.
Proceed at your own risk, but it still lets you proceed, and so what would the user ever do based on what that says?
Well, if you presented them a dialogue, then they could presumably hit retry. Once the, like, if they know that they're in the train tunnel, they get out of the tunnel and then they hit retry once it's restored.
It would do that automatically, wouldn't it? When they make a future edit, but I guess.
Well, it would only do that if we told it, like, we want you to basically retry any existing transactions before accepting new ones. So it'd select that in the queue and like it would retry on the next message.
Yeah. I would assume it would keep trying the first one in the queue and say, can I even get one change out?
SQLite full relational, see, I don't wanna do a full relational database for this. Hive, vStar, I use vStar. I don't wanna do that though.
We use that with, source it.
Let's see. I want to keep this simple and use shared references. I really don't exceed 1 megabytes of data. Like if we've got 3 transactions queued and we know we don't have connectivity, we should probably stop.
I wouldn't wanna stop. I'd wanna be able to keep running even though I'm offline.
Yeah, that would be a full offline. At that point, this architecture is probably not the right solution. At that point, I should just implement a full offline first model with syncing.
Yeah.
But no choice. Bigger connectivity problems to solve. Okay. How should the conflicts be handled when Firebase returns data that differs from pending local changes? Even on another user. Yeah, so last write wins, so it's got that. Last write wins, merge when user prom, no, I'm not doing that. Last write wins. Okay, which operation should use the optimistic write system? All list and item mutations, every write goes through the queue. Item operation only, subset of high frequency operation. Should the UI indicate sync status for pending writes? No indicator, but no, I want this like visible in the background. How should the queue detect when to try pending transactions? Activity listener, periodic retry. Let's do.
Built-in suspenders.
Yeah. It does, I think that built-in suspenders is in the superpowers code. He says that a lot, and Claude will repeat it a lot.
What does it mean?
Like, you're double,
Yeah.
Oh, you're keeping your pants up no matter
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like.
I've never heard that, that's funny.
In coding, it's like, should I validate the UI, on the client side or validate it on the back end? You should do both.
Yeah.
It's belt and suspenders. Architecture overview, okay, so now it's reviewing. So new components, a list cache, holds a map, string, behavior subject list model for active lists, manages reference counting per list ID. When count hits 0, dispose of behavior subject removes from map. write queue, it's a new service, and transaction. This is already more complicated than I was imagining, but we've got AI on our side. Modify components. List manager gains the list cache, exposes a stream, watch list ID instead of a raw Firebase stream. All mutation methods apply optimistically to cache first. This sounds like what I want. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, and then, okay, section 2, list cache implementation, so it'll give me a cache structure, subscription flow, okay, unsubscription flow, count, to on-call callback, decrements rat count, if count hits 0, cancels Firebase subscription, that's exactly what I want. Firebase reconciliation, the Firebase subscription still runs alongside local updates. This ensures the cache reflects the Firebase streams plus pending local data changes at all times. Initial values. When creating a new behavior subject, fetch the current Firebase value first, or use cache value recently accessed. This ensures watch list can amend immediately. Okay. Yep. Write queue and transaction model. So the transaction model ID, list ID, transaction type. Okay, so it's got different types. Payload, created add, retry count, payload examples. Write queue operations, queue process queue. The thing I've learned with mobile though is nobody sticks around for, like that will never happen. Sessions are usually really short. Watch this. So hold on. On second thought, I think the delay for a mobile app should be more aggressive due to short sessions. Maybe 1 to 3 seconds. Retry. So basically I'm referencing the previous question and it's gonna figure it out. It says, good call, mobile sessions are short, aggressive retry makes sense.
I'm AI, I'm telling you
Yeah.
everything you want to hear.
Yeah. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, 3, 3, cap at 3 seconds after third retry. After 10 consecutive failures on the same transaction, pause it, try the next one. Periodic retry. No, don't continue to the next transaction because the first is probably failing. I guess if you had some business logic that the first transaction could fail, but the second one could succeed, but I don't like it. Basically, if that first one's not gonna work, nothing's working. You're right. The first transaction fails, the rest will too. Same network issue, same auth problem, whatever. No point trying the others. Okay.
It still has, well, in the middle of that, it still said a 30-second timer. Even above it had the other seconds. Number 3.
But I think it's saying it'll try like for a few times and then I'll wait for 30 seconds and then I'll try again.
Yeah.
Like, which only if it has the app open, right? Because it's not open. Nothing's gonna happen.
So now it's handling edge cases or errors. So it's gonna handle the Firebase off change, relog in, retry, list deleted while offline. So these are true like data collision scenarios. On list delete, filter out all queue transactions for that list ID, persist clean queue. App crash. So see, it's thinking through edge cases that like I wasn't really thinking through. Duplicate prevention. Okay, view model simplifications, pattern update, item color, result, listeners. So it's changing, so it's mutating the list model, and then it's calling the list item manager, upgrading, so it's calling the transaction. New pattern, oh, that's existing pattern. So the new pattern is just, oh yeah, because it doesn't need to do any of this stuff anymore, because then it's gonna round trip to the manager immediately, and it's just gonna await that, and then make a change. That's it. But the then pass through for mutations. Subscription setup also simplifies. Watch list, listen, okay. Error handling moves to a separate error stream or callback if needed rather than being mixed into every mutation. Okay. Initialization and app startup. Startup sequence. App initialize, get it services, write queue registers and restores, load pending transactions from shared preferences, registers on the right queue dependency, activity listener starts, periodic timer starts, all state listener. Okay, dependencies to add, connectivity plus package, and I already have this, RF start. I don't want dependency on RF start.
I don't even know what our start is.
It's just a reactive
Yeah.
implementation. There's like, RX is like a pattern that a lot of different, languages have implemented, but I don't know where it started.
No problem, you can achieve
Exists for Swift too.
same behavior for a simple wrapper class, value stream. Okay, so basically it's implementing the behavior thing. That's why I never heard of that term, it's an RX term. Immediate value on subscription, no waiting, standard dart streams, no RX start, yeah, that's
Is he gonna call it something other than behavior subject?
yeah, I think behavior subject was an RX term, so it's like, it's just a value stream. Oh, custom behavior subject replacement. Oh, yeah, yes, it is, it's a value stream.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. I see this a lot too, that you'll pull in a whole dependency for one little thing, and then it's like 20 lines of code is all you actually needed. Drop the dependency, that's, your life will be so much better. Summary, okay, so what we're building, value stream, list cache, transaction, write queue. Alright. Alright, ready? Okay, so here's the keys. The summary looked
Go.
right, ready for me to write the design document. Yes. Now, the other thing you could have done here is, like, I could have told it, write this out to document, so that maybe I wanna have a conversation with design and engineering and, like, in this case, I'm a
Like
product.
a PDF or something?
Well, it prefers MD files. Okay, so it'll create, like, I have a docs folder in my repo, and then it'll just have like, we just have a bunch of like MD files in that doc folder.
But then you could open that in a markdown viewer.
Well, so VS Code has an open preview. So, yeah, so you can review the plan here. And then you can check that in source. It serves as documentation of things that you built. This is the design doc, that's the implementation plan. So,
Are these the ones that it just made? No.
well, it just popped that up, that one is, but, this is the one I was describing earlier. So Claude, okay, and so it actually it wrote out the design in the file, so that is the default paper, so yes, I do want you to write that out. So, we can go read that now. Okay. So, eliminate UI lag, can go offline in scenarios gracefully, persistently, architecture, new components, value stream. So basically, you would want to go over this. This is the actively engaged part. Like, you would want to go over this line by line because it's going to build this. So if you don't like something in here, now's the time to tell it. Okay, so now it's going to commit that plan to Git, add optimistic write design document. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Claude doesn't like MCP, it prefers command line tools, does really well with those. Ready to set up for implementation. If yes, I'll create a Git work tree for isolated development or write a detailed implementation plan. So it's basically asking me, do I want to skip writing an implementation plan and just go right into development? It probably is doing that because it doesn't think this is that complicated, or it thinks this is enough to go by. Let's have it write an implementation plan. But don't ask me any questions. Oh yeah, so it's saying, okay, the writing plan superpower, yep.
I wonder if it thought about whether it should ask you that question. I guess
No,
it is not that.
it has to ask me before using the skill. This guy, that Obra guy, in addition to these superpowers, he's got a blog article on this. He took, he was like, one of the problems with AI is it's too verbose and wordy, and I don't like reading the documents. So he found like the first edition of the Strunk and White Elements of Style, which is like a classic book on how to write like tight prose, and it's from like 1918. He found it's not copyrighted anymore. He found that text. He fed it into Claude and said, summarize this into a skill, a writing skill. And he's got that in here. So anytime it writes, it'll sometimes pull that skill in, and it does. It like, the writing is so much clearer.
This is cool. I feel like I want that just in my normal ChatGPT interactions.
Yes, you do. Let me write the detailed implementation plan. So like, if I come in here, so here's his skills, right? I think it's at the bottom, the writing skill. So it's used in writing new skills, editing existing skill. No, this is not what this is. This is the test script. Oh, okay. This is actually, you want Claude to write a new skill. This is what it does. Where is his?
Writing plans? No.
It's somewhere else. He does this other thing, see how does this other thing, he's got an MCP server, which is a journal for Claude. So he tells Claude, when I interact with you, and you learn my preferences and style, you can use this journal MCP server to take notes to and it gets like emotional, like how you feel about the way that we're interacting and how you if you think you're doing a good job, write
Claude
notes
writes
in your journal.
Journal, that's silly.
And it writes it into this journal, and then it stores it into a vector database, and it serves as sort of like memory for Claude. And then, I haven't tried any of this out, but I've read about it on his blog. But he's like, if you ask it something you were doing 2 weeks ago, and you're like, hey, I was working on this thing, you and I were working on it, you said this, it'll reference its memory, and it'll find like, oh yeah, Jesse has a preference for this thing, and we were talking about this other thing. It's in its journal. And then sometimes he'll like coach it like, hey, why don't you write in your journal about this interaction? It's pretty cool.
I don't have time for this, write in your journal.
So there is a writing clearly and concisely skill.
On his, where'd you find it?
It's a different, I think it's a different repository.
Okay. This was fascinating here.
The elements of style is the name of the repository.
Yeah, I'm gonna wanna get that if it's available for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Claude.
It's a Claude Code plugin, but he does tell you how to use his plugins in Codex. Foundational writing guidance when working on documentation, user-facing text, or any prose that needs clarity and proper style. It's a skill and a reference to the complete 1918 text. Uses 12,000 tokens. Claude will automatically use the writing clearly and concisely skill when appropriate. Source, yeah, that's public domain. So when you have a skill, you can have the skill in V file, which is a description, but you can also have reference documents that the skill can reference. You can have coding samples. Okay, so I just got a notification. Okay, you want me to make this edit? Yes.
Wait, so what did it just finish doing?
It wrote an implementation plan.
Okay.
Um,
Why did it take that long to just write the plan? I guess that's.
Shoot, man, it did a lot of work.
A lot of thinking.
Yeah, okay, alright.
So let's see. And also architecture, tech stack, task swarm. So it's gonna do all this. Create value stream, utility class. Yeah, it does, it writes a lot of code in here. Oh, it's also saying, so part of the super skills is like test-driven development, and then kind of dovetailing from part one of the talk is like you need to have like unit tests and your Dart analyzer, static code analysis, all that kind of stuff. And so I've told Claude, here's all the things that I've put in place for you to help verify the project is working. I want you to run the analyzer and get 0 warnings. I want you to run the unit test suite and get all passing tests. And I want you to make sure it compiles. And then I want it committed to source, right? So basically it's gonna, if you look in here, this implementation plan, it is using test-driven development because that's one of the superpowers. So in task 2, it's gonna say, step 1, write a failing test first. So it's actually doing test-driven development.
That's neat.
It's gonna write, and it's got the failing test, right? So you can review them. And run tests to verify they fail, expected, and then write the implementation, okay, so now it implements it. And then run tests to verify they all pass. Now run the Dart code analyzer, make sure that issues are found, and then commit on that branch. And so it's doing a commit per task. It's pretty slick, man. Okay, so it's trying to commit that, yeah, commit that plan. Okay, now the plan is complete and saved. 2 execution options. So this is where I'm saying you've got 2 options. Sub-agent driven, this session, I dispatch a fresh sub-agent per task, code review between tasks, fast iteration. 2 parallel sessions, separated. Open a new Claude Code session in a work tree, run execute plan, batch execution with checkpoints. I think I do. Okay, so sub-agent driven development.
So how did you decide between those two?
I think this is faster, and the parallel session actually, like, it's gonna spin up new sessions. I haven't tried, I don't think I've done parallel session before, actually.
Sounds confusing.
I think the parallel session would work better for the scenario I had where I have a front end and a back end, where it could like spin up a session just on my back end and go get all the back end related tasks and implement them in parallel. Okay, so now this is really it. This is agentic coding. Like, now you've got 9 tasks and pro tip here. So
Time to live dangerously.
yeah. Dangerously skip permissions. This is the only way to get it to like really go through. Resume. The other nice thing about this is I have a fresh context window now. So it figured out, I could have resumed my actual context, but I think this is better because you clear the context window, it just reads the plan and it goes. So now it's doing I'm executing the plans that implement the optimistic rights. I read the plan, okay. No tasks have been started, all right, here it goes. So now you've got, 9 tasks, you're living dangerously, and this is the point where you could just walk away and go to lunch.
And then if you were gonna load I forgot what it was, your hello, well, you use Claude, not hello.
Yeah, happy.
Hacking,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't be able to do that because
I
you
could-
initiated it with?
Yeah,
Claude?
I wouldn't be able to, I had to initiate the session with happy.
Okay, what all superpowers did we use? We used the planning one,
Brainstorming,
brainstorming, I mean.
Right plan.
Right plan, and then now it switched to a new
It's
one and I
using
didn't notice it.
executing plan.
Executing plan, okay.
And there's a review, which is like a code review. Now, I found late last week, and I didn't wanna go on a tangent exploring. Anthropic has a sort of competing thing to this. Well, you can tell, like, this thing's robust, like, they're using this internally, like, this is the way that they develop their own. But they have a set, a plugin set for, theirs is called feature development, which is what we're doing. We're adding a feature to an existing program. And it's like a full, multi-step skill system, right? And it's like this, it's like brainstorming and planning and implementing. But there's one of the things I really liked about it that I wanted to see in action. In the reviewing step, they spin up like 3 sub-agents. And each of the sub-agents have their own specialty. So there's a security sub-agent, there's like I don't remember what the other one, or engineering sub-agent, I don't remember what the third one was. But they're all looking at different things, and then they bring their code review back, and then it merges it all back together with the parent, and then gives you a full review
And this is gonna be huge for security, to always have a security,
Yeah,
you
like
know.
sub agent, yeah. Y'all feel like this live, implementation is better, or than a prepared presentation?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
I feel like it's more real world, and like when I'm watching some of the YouTube videos, the ones that I actually like are when I see them like using the tools, like actually seeing what if you look over somebody's shoulder and watch them use VS Code, you learn so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Like people use different hotkeys, they've got different little mini workflows, like you just learn a lot more. And I like not rehearsing it, cause I ran into all the like, this is what happens a lot. I think of some simple implementation, like, oh, this is better than what I have, it's simple, but then it kinda talks me through it, it's like, maybe I should have just told it to build an offline first model. Maybe that's what I actually wanted. Like if I end up there in 2 months, I should have just done it.
Well, you ended up there quicker. It's asking me for feedback.
Ready for feedback. Should I continue with the next batch test? Yes. So you could, oh, that's in the skill. It says every few tasks, stop and let them look at it.
Yes,
What's going
stop
on.
asking.
Okay, let's continue, because I wanna see if we can get to a good point we can run it.
Do you have a deadline tomorrow? You gotta get this in tomorrow.
Yeah. Deadline on myself.
Yeah, I always like doing kind of the local persistence as the source of truth for apps. It makes sense for a lot of apps, and the benefit is it's so much faster.
Yeah.
To,
It's a better user experience
and
for
like,
sure.
yeah, and like most ORMs too, it's like in memory is what you're working with, and then you can have, if you are writing to a lot, you can batch the writes to, to SQLite or whatever, and then you're like already within like within a database world, and so then you can figure out, maybe you can mark things as like not synced yet, and then you can sync them up, and then you can mark them as synced. And everything's like atomic, so if anything crashes or something, you can come back in.
Do you think it's ever overkill?
I mean, it could be overkill, but I think, if you're gonna be spending hundreds of hours working on something, this is not that big of an investment.
Yeah. I do find, so this app has like 40,000 monthly actives, and it uses that anonymous user session. No, I'm giving you an example of short-sightedness. It uses that anonymous user session that then you can upgrade to an email password-based account, which is a nice UX that we wanted, because we didn't want to ask users for an email just to have them try the app out.
Yeah.
But we never forced them to make an email password, and we suggested they do it. Like we were like, hey, you never, oh no. It's like, hey, you never created an account. But then people, if you don't force them, what I learned is they just click through it. They'll just cancel always, because they never want to stop and create an account if you make it optional. And then what happens is they get a new phone, and they have this anonymous account, and they lose all their data, because you can't re-authenticate to that anonymous account.
Oh, there's no keys that you can persist.
So what I've had to do is,
What were the last 3 things you remembered adding? Really?
Because for that, I mean, the apps that I have been working on work too, we have like anonymous users too, but then we save the like key for the thing to their keychain, so it's like, and for most people, like on iOS, most people,
Yeah.
that goes to
Yeah.
their iCloud account, and so
Yeah.
if they have a new device, it's still there.
Yeah, so that's one way, on iOS. Android, I don't think, I'm trying to remember, Android has some different way. They don't have the equivalent of like an iCloud sync, keychain, I don't think.
You need Google account to do some stuff like that.
Yeah. But anyway, my point was, we implemented this 9 years ago, and we never forced them to make an account, and we do get occasional emails where people are like, I lost all my data, and they're pretty mad about that.
Where did you expect your data to be?
Yeah. I was like, you never created an account, did you? And they're trying to use the password reset feature on their new phone, cause they're like trying to log in and it doesn't work, and then they're like, oh, maybe I forgot my password, so they're trying to do the forgot password, but then they just never get an email. And it's a security thing, you're not supposed to like reveal to the user that email is real or not. So you just say, well, if that exists, we sent it. But.
So you could send an email to the email saying, hey, you don't have an account. You could do that.
Yeah, I guess so.
That would be fun.
That wouldn't help them get all their data back though.
No.
No, but
That would help the
at least tell them that you never created an account. Anyway, so my point of saying that was, we should have just changed it a while back to like, after you create like one list or two lists, like if you wanna keep going, we just force you to create the account.
Yeah, that's what I find to do.
It just, yeah, so it's just like, things you should have done from the beginning that you didn't do. But I think this type of tooling will help though, like, I think my mindset sometimes is, that gets me in trouble, is like, oh, we're a startup, we're trying to move fast and iterate, I don't even know if this is gonna work at all, so I don't do the robust solution, cause it's new.
Right.
But then I never, cause it was always a side project, I never come back and actually do the robust version once it's working. And then you end up with a bunch of support information. But I think if this thing can implement the robust version, like I
Yeah.
wouldn't have implemented it this way, cause this would have been a lot of work, a lot of testing.
Yeah.
So the 8.1K tokens, that's how much is downloaded from?
I think that's just
Yeah,
for
the
that
responses.
request.
Downloaded?
But meaning like, cause that number's not going up, so it's like doing something that's not adding to that number?
I bet it's thinking on the, I bet it's thinking.
Locally or something?
See, now it's going up, now down. Oh, but it's only incrementing. So this must be total token count, and it's going up and down.
Yeah.
I wonder if it reset the context up here, it'll compact.
Oh, that.
Like all the source code. You know what, I don't, it never created a branch. Should've done that. Yeah, but it's committing.
Oh. You can cherry pick.
Yeah. I can fix it, it's just,
Tell it to.
it's just annoying.
Tell it to fix it.
Yeah, you can.
Put all those in the branch you should have made.
Well, I kinda wanted to get to the end, you could interrupt it and just say, hey, bro, like, you never created a
Well, I
branch.
mean, at the end, you can do that at the end,
Yeah.
right?
But mine's looking at the.
What time do we have to be out here?
9 o'clock, everything out, 8:30 is when the meeting's done. But it's not a hard, you guys can see that. Also, if either of you drove here and are parked downstairs, we have validation.
Yeah, right on the street. Yeah, I parked at the street, yeah. It's free after 6.
Yeah.
Where is the validation?
He put a stack of them, I think they're over there.
Oh.
So you were mentioning that, you didn't have good experience taking like a high fidelity mockups to code. That was with Flutter though, right?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
Flutter.
Because in Swift UI, I think it does it does good. Like even just like give it a screenshot and like, you know, whatever custom assets you have and just describe.
Jessica here, sorry. Jessica here.
Yeah. Describe the UI and then in like one shot, in my experience, it does good
Oh, really?
at that. Not that and I haven't really been using that for actual real implementation, but for the Thursday interview I have, they said they're gonna give me a mock-up and they want me to like within 10 to 15 minutes produce code using AI. They said you can do whatever you want. You can use AI, you can write it yourself if you want.
Impossible task.
So you can try to do this in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and so I've been practicing it.
So what are you using to do that?
I'm gonna use Claude Code.
Okay, and it's outputting Swift?
Yeah.
Did they tell you to use Cloud Code, or did they
They
say use any API?
They said use anything, for example, examples including Claude Code.
Are you interviewing for a Swift job? What are you thinking?
Flutter. It's actually
Oh,
Flutter.
and they want you to do it in Swift?
Yeah, so they're hiring it for iOS lead,
Okay.
but they use Flutter, and so they're expecting that the person that they hire doesn't know Flutter yet, but can learn it pretty quickly.
Okay, that's cool.
But yeah, so I just like already have I have that Xcode project set up with everything ready to go, and then I created a Claude MP file that's like specific for this. It's like put everything in one file, and don't use any external dependencies. Just add whatever you want, and then that works. That's
Cool. And what are you giving it as the, it's an image, are you just like drawing up a mock-up or?
So they're gonna give me a Figma project and tell me like build this screen.
Are you testing it with Figma or with Screenshot?
So I'm just exporting the things from Figma and then putting those
As
in
like a
Claude Code.
PNG?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder how much if you actually hook it up to Figma, it would have all the values for the, pixels and stuff like that.
There is a Figma MCP,
Not that you should
and
do that.
I think, the problem is, so it's Patrick is the designer. He gives me, look at this, so it's on task 9, which is run the full test suite and quality checks. So it's, there are 75 test failures. Kind of because they don't have the right key register, they need to update the test one, okay. But yeah, Patrick gives me, it's Keynote Designs. So.
Oh, that Patrick.
Yeah.
That Patrick. Who was Thread, right? He was working on Thread too? Okay.
Yeah. So this is his design markup. So he'll give me this, and I'll, what I've tried to do is just take like a screen capture and just say implement that. And it roughs it in to where then I can just go modify it, but he wants it pixel perfect. Like he wants I've just worked with him for 10 years now, so I know like our workflow is actually, I'll show this off. So I use a project called Xscope, which is really old and has not changed. And then there's a tool called Overlay. And so then I will take a screenshot like this. It's hard to work on. So I'll take a screenshot like this, and then, I'll take that iPad simulator, and I will overlay it, and you can change the opacity.
That's cool. I do this in GIMP. I need this tool. Like I'm like barking with GIMP trying to get, modifying opacity and lining things up to count pixels. What is this tool? It's called Overlay?
The app is called Xscope. And then it has several tools for doing this type of work.
Cool.
So you can do like guides or rulers. So you can like, you know, if you want to see like, well, how many pixels is that thing? I can measure it. That kind of stuff. So it's a whole set of tools. I just end up using Overlay a lot.
Yeah.
When I'm working with that. And the other thing is like something between Keynote and Flutter or iOS. Like the pixels are generally pretty correct. Like, but I've had to learn like Keynote where you know, I'll come in here and I'll look at the text. It's like SF Pro regular. It's double, like, so this would be 17 point in the app. It's half. Anyway, so I digress, but it's still running. So let me verify there are no more get list string references and run the test. Good. Now run the full test suite. So even though there were 79 failing tests, it just churned on fixing those, and it's going to fix all that stuff before all 435 tests pass. Now let me format and analyze, make sure everything's clean. All quality checks pass. Let me update the changes. So it cleaned everything up before it came back to me and said, hey,
Because you told it
it's
to.
ready. Yeah.
You told it to not bother you with questions.
No, and not because of that. It's in the skill that it has to verify everything before it's done. Okay, so now, finishing a development branch. You never started a branch. I'm using the finishing a development branch skill to complete this work. Verify tasks, determine the base branch. Oh, we're already on main, not a feature branch. Let me check the get stats. Let's see if it fixes it for me. Okay, implementation complete. What would you like to do? Commit to main directly, create a feature branch and PR, move changes. Oh, look.
Wow.
Yeah, move that
Yeah.
over here. As is, discard this word.
It's not discard.
Yeah. So Cloud Code is really good at command line tools, and it'll use GitHub CLI if you have that installed. So it'll actually like create a PR, and it'll go read PRs and figure stuff out. They have and this is why I know the Claude team uses it for production work. They've got a slash command in here that's like, it's something like GitHub comments. And basically it'll reach out to the related PR, and so you can go through the PR in GitHub and leave comments in your code review on the PR, and save that and say, hey, you need to fix this. Now you come back into Claude Code and you say, whatever it is, PR-comments. Get comments from a GitHub pull request. It pulls all the comments down and then creates a to-do list and starts ripping through the comments. So this is like just like a real world workflow. It's not gonna like run off on every single comment I make. It's gonna wait until I'm done and then come in here and just knock them all out at one time. Okay, so done. Pull request created. The feature optimistic rights branch has been pushed and a PR has been created against me. So let's go. Okay, we would go look at that PR, but I think
Just
we
run
all,
it. Just run it.
we all want to know is does this thing run?
But how are we gonna test that it's working?
If it works at all, we'll be good. All good. Error launch.
On iPhone, you can like slow the network down on purpose. Like it's a developer setting for that. So you can simulate like a spotty connection.
Yeah.
So because it changed my dependencies, it won't. It's just running Dart code, right? It won't run pod install for me on the iOS project. For some reason, I have to do it manually sometimes. So yeah, that's another thing. It actually installed new dependencies. So we could go look at the. What did it do? So it added the connectivity plus.
Look at the, not just comparing to it. Are you looking at the whole changes to this file? Or?
Hold on. Skip the project style. What is this?
So what dependency management do people use in Flutter?
It's built in. It's pub spec. Pub.dev is the, if you go to the website.
There's some other ones too that people really like. I always just use Pub, but I forget the names of the other ones, but that's the most supported one.
This thing, this trick, you can do right click iOS or Android folder and say open. So the Android folder will open in Android, which is nice because all the projects are named iOS runner, so you can't tell them apart in Xcode.
Yeah.
Couple things not installed. Well, there's stuff. This is weird. Sync is not installed. What's going on here? In my shell environment, neither pod nor Flutter are in the path. Oh man. I didn't reboot my computer right before I came here, so now it's what? Micropod is installed. Configs is installed. Yeah, micropod is installed. Ah, there. hopelessly out of sync. I'm gonna just restart VS Code and fix that. This appears to be doing a lot better. Alright, we're gonna go, we'll have an answer. These nuts were not nearly as satisfying as I hoped they would be.
There's two kinds of it. Like one's with all and out.
So let's look live coding.
Yep.
You have to take the cooking show approach and have a pre-baked
Yeah.
solution. And it's like, oh, I promise I did this earlier, and this is what.
I actually didn't want to see all the. I didn't want to see all the things I was gonna catch until I wanted it live.
Maybe it'd be quicker to launch on Android.
Yeah, I don't know if I haven't run the project on Android in a while. I don't know if I have anything working. This is taking longer than normal though. One thing, there is a bug in the simulator where it like pegs one of the processors. And I have found that so it might be chewing up all the processing power, and so the build is taking longer. It is loading, so that's good. Should launch. I mean, it was spitting out debug console stuff, so it at least ran and loaded. But I think what we were looking at was my old running instance. I don't think it was the new one. Okay. No, this is the new one. Okay. Alright, so now it's live. I don't know, I can't tell.
That's what I was gonna say. How are we gonna know?
Well,
It's still working, so that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not broken. That doesn't feel. Oh, no, it's pretty fast. Still a little bit of lag, but I think I've got some other issues going on.
Merge it.
Merge it. It's done. We're done.
Nice.
It was cool.
Alright.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes, doing it with a fresh project. I just started a new Flutter app from nothing, and I was following the same procedure, but not with just adding a feature or changing something, but with like developing a whole app from scratch. I'm still in the beginning phases of
The brainstorming. You're still,
Yeah, brainstorming.
It never got to the end of the brainstorming?
I think it did, but I
Oh,
stopped.
right, we started.
Yeah.
We met early, like an hour early, and started that.
Cool.
So he's gonna try to do an app from scratch.
Yeah.
Um,
I will look at the code though. I'm not gonna try to do it. My last project, I had a goal, I did it on purpose, to completely write the entire script. It wasn't a Flutter app, it was a script, without ever once looking at the code and just seeing if we could do it. Kind of did. Got most of the way there.
if we could do simulate offline.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So here's another power tool I have. I have Rocket Sim. it's one of my favorites. So I do all my coding against the iOS simulator, and then Rocket Sim allows me to do things, like modify things in real time, but also like take screenshots for the App Store. I can modify different things, but one of the things it'll let me modify is the airplane mode. That's a little off. It's not what I expected it to do. But actually, the fact that it works at all is an improvement. So it's not creating a new item. Let's see if I can change the color.
It was a second ago.
Oh, doing like
turn off light.
multi-line items, they're like multi-line
That's what it
items?
looks like to me, but
Yeah, they're not creating, the inner's not creating a new item.
when it's not
But like,
connected.
look, this I think worked, because I'm disconnected right now.
But that's all local, it doesn't have to go out to change the color on.
Right, and I made this change, which went through the list detail view model to the manager, and then this, I think this guy was listening to the same change, and it changed. So then if I turn it back on, it should just sync up, see what the.
Yeah, I'm curious what it's actually doing, if it did for some reason think it was a multi-line.
Actually can't make that noise with those. Where did my VS Code go? Oh, when I went offline, it killed it. See if we can get road C. But that, like, if that. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so now I'm in here, item, so that's how it works online. But if I go offline, and I say, item, I think it's still connected.
But it does this like multi-line thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you need to add some tests.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be good. Alright, I'll have to troubleshoot. But it might be one of those things where, like on the last one that I did, it looked like nothing worked, but then I fixed one little thing and everything behind it did work. So it might be one little thing that's missing.
Yeah. I feel like it might even just be an enter key issue, like it's sometimes interpreting it as a new line and sometimes interpreting it as a create new item, you know?
But it only seems to be doing it offline.
When it's offline, yeah, that's kinda weird, so probably a deeper.
But it might be something, yeah, something where like, because the state updates, it somehow like, there's some kind of
Yeah.
assumption in there where you. Where it's like like when you.
Yeah,
return,
how were
it's like
you-
submitting it and then it's like
Yep, what were you
re-rendering it.
previously doing on enter? Did you have a special case to look for an enter key and have that go talk to the server? Or did you?
Yeah, when you hit enter, that ended editing, created a new item, made the new item active.
Yeah, so now it's not
So
doing
all
that,
that-
it can't, and so then it's saying, well, just hit the end key, and so it's doing a new line.
Yeah, I don't know why it would do that, but these, like, when I was connected, every save should like do this little fire emoji. That's how I know it's a Firebase save in my logging. And so but yeah, it might have changed the logging too. So I don't know what it's doing. Alright, man, that's all we can do today.
Alright.
Yeah.
This is cool, this was excellent, I guess it feels like a three demo, like a three-phase thing, not just the two, like this was part two, right?
Yeah.
But I also feel like, I mean, also gave that demo a lot to go now. Part one, I guess, of the same demo, but it's also really cool.
Yeah, I was hoping for like part three, I could figure out some of the, on the testing stuff, how to actually get it to run my Flutter app and verify it works. But like that level of interaction, I don't think a UI test would actually catch. Cause like we couldn't tell by looking at it what was actually happening on the back end. I think it needs to be more like I think what I need to get working next is from the manager, run an integration test through the backend and verify that on a live database that round trip actually works the way you think it is. I think is the next thing. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. And I learned a lot. I'm gonna try, see what I can do.
Yeah, good luck. Alright, so we don't need these. Well, thank you guys for showing up.
Yeah. And what is it? The next meeting is in January?
Yeah, in January. We're trying to have a month of, well, we're trying to move it to, we're gonna try to move it to the second week
Second one?
of the month.
I think I won't be able to come at the outside of the country.
Yeah.
I have a daughter that is, married, outside of the country.
All year?
Huh?
All year?
No, I mean, I have a daughter that is married in January.
Cool. Well, when you're back, we'll be here. That's it.
Alright, I'll see you guys.
See you, Dave.
Thank you. Let's get started here.
Are those have a date on them?
No, it does expire, but for a while. Do you want some?
I got one. No, I got one. Oh, when do they expire?
March. Okay.
Oh,
Take some, put it in your car.
okay. Just keep them.
No,
I definitely prefer to park in the garage for $8, cause.
Yeah, it only works, you can't show up before 6.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and you have, did you?
Well, yeah.
Oh, I don't know how they enforce that,
Okay.
but that's what they always say.
Okay, well, we'll see what.
You might have to pay
A little
more,
bit.
cause you still have to pay,
Yeah.
you know, the $8, so it might add an extra whatever onto it, but it's not gonna be 32.
Cool, well, I think that went.
Yeah. Cool, did we turn the projector on?
Oh, yeah. There's a remote.
Absolutely, we're good there. Sweet. And I'll let you know how it goes. I'm going to Mexico for the rest of the month. I leave next week.